good evening and welcome to the Sharonville City Council meeting. Thank you all for coming. It's so great to see so many people in our audience tonight. If everyone would please stand, we're going to have a moment of silent prayer, and then Mr. Lippert is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, you can all be seated now. Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Coulter?
Here.
Mr. Lovett?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mrs. Knight? Here. Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes for April 25th. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes that were sent out? Seeing none, those stand as written and distributed. We're going to move on to Mayor Hardman and our communications and reports.
Thank you. First of all, we'll have Mayor's Court report for you at our next meeting of the month. So at this point, I would ask Ms. Hoppy to join me down front, and we are going to swear in a new police officer. So.
Yeah.
Here. That is yours. Now, starting over down there on the left, all these fine folks up here want to shake your hand and welcome you.
Hold it down.
Congratulations, sir. We're glad to have you. Now get back to work. So,
Do you want to give them a moment for pictures?
I thought with all the other
Yeah.
they can stick around if he wants, but are you working tonight, Stephen? Are you on duty tonight? No, sir. No? Okay. He has to take you to dinner. That's all part of, that's the important part of the event. heard that from his boss, so that makes it happen. All right, so I do have my Mayor's Court report for y'all as we get back on here. We had total collections of $15,465 for the month of April. And year-to-date, we are a little over $75,500 in revenue from Mayor's Court. So the full report will be part of the minutes of tonight's meeting. We have a full agenda of some great young people that are here and some great other individuals with our police department. So I have nothing else unless anybody has any questions for me.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to our Safety Service Director, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you. A few things before we get to the legislation this evening. First, each of you have a Gorilla Glue product in front of you. They had some excess product that they either were going to discard or to donate. They thought of us, or the fire department may have told them to think about us. I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but we wound up with about 300 of these that we've been passing around to employees, and very nice donation on Gorilla Glue's behalf, or from them. Second, Anna Ellerling is here somewhere.
She's in the back. She's talking to John.
Anna?
He's keeping her from listening.
Anna has some very good. Anna has some very good news about our Christmas on the Loop event that we thought that we heard yesterday. That we thought we would share with everybody publicly today.
Good evening, Council. You must have known I was going to come talk to you about Christmas on the Loop because I feel like you lowered the temperatures in here.
Yes,
to polar
thank
bear.
you.
Love it. So, Jim Lucas brought to our attention that there was an opportunity to apply for a Hamilton County small business event grant. And so I applied for Christmas on the Loop and found out just earlier this week that we were one of the municipalities that is receiving the grant funds. So it essentially doubles our budget for Christmas on the Loop this year. So we get to expand into our new event space that's coming downtown. It's going to be bigger. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be all sorts of festivities. So we're very, very excited.
And as you're so happy, I'm sitting here looking at the police going, oh, good Lord.
I already sent that out right away. I was
Yeah.
like, so I'm going to need some officers because we're going to have lots of people walking around downtown.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
that's so exciting. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
And then last, Chief Nesbitt and I have been talking about sharing some of the good work some of our officers are doing more publicly in nature than we have in the past. And Chief thought tonight would be a good idea to bring Lieutenant Cordes in front of you to give his experience from CLE.
So Lieutenant Cordes had an opportunity to participate in CLE, and he's going to give you a rundown on what it is. But it is one of the more executive level cornerstone trainings that we're using as we're developing the police department moving forward, part of our succession planning, and he'll give you all the nitty gritty. But thank you.
Evening.
Hi.
I think everyone knows me. If you don't, I'm Walt Cordes. I'm the Support Services Lieutenant here at the Police Department. Again, he asked me to stop by and talk to you about some of the professional development that we're doing, as well as my experience at CLE. I know you heard from Lieutenant Nesbitt, Lieutenant Griffith a few weeks ago about his experience at National Academy. I do not have a PowerPoint slideshow or any handouts or any goodies or anything like that. It's going to be pretty quick and simple, me explaining and you getting to ask whatever questions that you have, and we can get out of here and move on if that's okay with everybody. So, again, Chad's not the only one who's done some professional development lately. I graduated from CLE in February of this year. CLE is short for the Certified Law Enforcement Executive, and it's kind of the culmination of several trainings offered by the Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police through their Law Enforcement Foundation. First being STEP, the supervisor training program. All of our sergeants, when they're promoted, will attend STEP, and that's usually within the first 6 months or a year after they get promoted. And it's important for them to see that change in perspective from being an officer to being a sergeant to being a supervisor. Once you've been a supervisor for a few years, if you're looking to promote to be a lieutenant or a freshly promoted lieutenant, probably attend PELC, which is the Police Executive Leadership College. Both STEP and PELC are 3-month-long programs, usually 1 week of in-residence followed by 3 weeks of off-residence where you do homework. PELC is a little bit more advanced, and there's a capstone project that's involved with that. you've been a supervisor for a few years, you have enough professional credits and experience, they'll let you apply for and attend CLE and attain that certification. CLE is a 14-month-long program. There's 10 modules, 10 different topics that we address, a lot of reading, a lot of writing, only about 7 days of in-residence. So the majority of it is the 14 books that we're assigned to read, and the 12 papers that we're assigned to write, ranging in length from 4 pages to, I think the longest was the 40-page research paper on police ethics. What I liked most about CLE was that it was local. I had a lot of people who were local executives here in Hamilton County and Butler County that were in my class with me. The chief of Fairfield Township, the assistant chief from Monroe PD, the assistant chief from Evendale was in my class. So I made a lot of connections there that I've already been able to bounce ideas and problems and solutions off of. The other thing that was most helpful and credible to me was that all of these topics and all these modules that we did weren't done in a vacuum or in a classroom. They were all practical. They all had an assignment that was related to the City of Sharonville Police Department. So when we did a topic on risk management, it was not just general studies, it was you're going to evaluate the Sharonville Police Department and report back to us on the 10 families of risk and the things that you evaluated in your department and how you're going to address them. We talked about resource allocation. It wasn't just general numbers that they came up with in a vacuum. It was me poring over 2 years of calls for service for the Sharonville Police Department, trying to figure out what we're going to, which ones are important, how much time it's taking us to answer these calls for service, and how many people we need to fulfill and police the City of Sharonville the way that Sharonville wants us to. And then report that back to not only my teachers, but to the chief, sort of as a consultant. So a lot of those classes, I felt, give me the ability and the confidence now to really associate with chief and help him lead and direct the department, which I feel really great about. I think based on a lot of the papers that I gave him, he and I see the department the same way, see a lot of the same problems, and a lot of the same solutions that we can do moving forward, including the 3 to 5 year strategic plan that I wrote for the department, which matched his very similarly that he did at CLE several years ago. In terms of what we're doing as a department, as he said, this is kind of the cornerstone class. I'm the 3rd officer or supervisor or commander to attend CLE. The first was Lieutenant Nesbitt when he was a lieutenant, and then it was Lieutenant Fisher, who became chief at Hilliard PD. We currently have another supervisor, Ryan Hermes, who is attending CLE and will graduate this time next year. And Chad attended the National Academy. And we have another sergeant, Sergeant Duddleson, who is attending the Northwestern School of Staff and Command this fall, which is another executive level course. It's very similar, very academic. So we'll have a variety of different insight from different schools that will be going towards leading the department. I have one sergeant who is attending STEP right now, and he will be graduating next week. And we have 2 more sergeants that I'm getting in the application process for PELC in the next couple of years. So it is absolutely a focus of ours moving forward for the next 3 to 5 years to work diligently to develop and advance our people and to hire as quickly as we can. We know that one of the biggest risks that we're facing is the depletion of our senior officers as they start retiring here in the next 3 to 5 years. More than likely, about 25% of our department is going to be turning over in those 5 years. So a major focus for us moving forward is human resources, hiring good people, getting them ready to go, and advancing the people that we have instead of those. That's kind of the quick and dirty that I could give you. Do you guys have any questions about anything that we're doing or about CLE or any of these classes?
Anyone have questions? I just want to say thank you, because I know that you guys go above and beyond and you do extra anyway, and then to do all of this classwork is taking you away from your families too. So thank you. I know, I do appreciate that.
It was a lot, but a lot of it was done, as I said, all these projects were part of the department. The community survey and the police department survey that I did last summer, that was a major cornerstone of my community engagement module, was trying to get some information from the community and trying to figure out where we're needed and where we're lacking and where we're excelling and how people are trusting us. And I took that a little bit of a step farther too in evaluating our people and trying to get some employee engagement and feedback. That was my capstone project, which was a big 30-minute presentation. At the end of it was developing an in-service training model based on employee feedback, employee engagement, and employee development to address those depletion that we're going to have.
Well, thank you. Mr. Cook?
When you did your 3 to 5 future plan, is there like an executive summary we could read that may summarize it all, or is it the entire report? I'd be curious to see what came out of that.
I do not have it as an executive summary. I could probably surmise it and put something together shortly for you if you'd like.
This is the 40-page report?
Not.
No.
I know that one almost felt like punishment. It was a lot, it was 40 pages of just police ethics. This one, I think, was about 13 or 14 pages.
Just some, I'd be curious to read the report, and if anyone else in council would like to review it, because I would like to see what the plan.
Certainly, I know the chief has most of them. I sent to him. Some of them he shared around a little bit.
Okay, I'll take the whole thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Congratulations on your
Yeah.
achievement, Lieutenant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then moving on to the legislation, there's 5 pieces in front of you this evening. Ordinance 2023-37 is a PACE-related ordinance. Scott McKeon's here this evening to talk about that.
Good evening. This ordinance has 3 main appropriation things going on. The first one in section 1 there is for PACE. We've had 2 PACE projects going on where we received the assessment from the tax bills where they've participated in this PACE program to do energy efficient improvements on the buildings. And then we pass this money on to the lender as it pays off the financing they did for whether it's solar panels or HVAC improvement or something of that nature. So we had a third project that kind of came online this year that we're responsible to remit to the lender. So this is appropriating the additional dollars for that. In section 2, we have a couple of advances going on. First is $156,000 going out from the general fund, advancing over to Fund 402. This is to front the grant funds needed for the right-of-way acquisition services and right-of-way acquisition related to the 42 Path project. We did appropriate the funds in 402 for that, but they're reimbursement basis from ODOT, so we need to advance those funds over to move forward with that. On the other end of the spectrum, there is a return of an advance from 406. We did a large sum of this last fall. This kind of zeroes that out, returning the last $179,000 from the 406 fund where we did the same kind of right-of-way acquisition for Houck Road, and this is coming back from the general fund. So, any questions on any of those items?
Anyone have questions? Thank you.
Next 2 pieces of legislation are fire department related, and Chief Sunderman's here.
Good evening all. I can tell from looking at all the red and tan faces, we've all been out mowing grass in the sunshine for
Bless you.
about the last 3 days. So, the first piece of legislation we have is for the replacement of a F-150 pickup truck. That is the truck that Sonnet, the arson dog, rides in, and obviously Chris Ellisteen, the handler. Just to remind everybody, about 3 years ago, when we took this dog on from the ATF, the dog itself is actually a federal agent, and we are contractually obligated to be able to transport that vehicle or that asset in a safe manner. The pickup truck that he is currently driving is a 2012 model, and it only has 75,000 miles on it, but it has had some catastrophic failures to the point where the repair of that vehicle is more than the value of the vehicle. So we are looking to replace it. I do have that down as an emergency, hoping that we can pass out this legislation as an emergency, so that if we find something to jump on, whether that be gently used, we're talking to Enterprise through their vehicle purchasing program to see what we can do with them, and we've checked in with quite a few dealers. So that's why I do have that down as an emergency, that if whatever we find that is the most economical and fastest solution, we could go ahead and move on that. Okay. Move on.
Yeah, you can keep going.
Okay. I feel like I'm taking up that. So the next piece of legislation we have is for the hiring of a full-time emergency vehicle technician. We've been looking at this. I I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 months now as to if this is something that would benefit the fire department. So just to give a little history, we have used vendors since the beginning of time, some local, some not local, to work on various aspects of fire apparatus. Over the last several years, the number of employees that those vendors have decreased, and as they have brought in new employees, some of them tend to be very young, and they're just learning, yet they're working on emergency vehicles. And we have had quite a few instances where vehicles just weren't being fixed correctly, or we assumed that they were being properly maintained in a preventative manner, and they just weren't. And about a year, well, actually it was a year and a month ago, we did find a mechanic that we do contract with who actually works in our building. He is his own business owner now, currently previously worked for Specialty Trucks. It does deal specifically with emergency apparatus. And we've contracted with him. He's in our building either 2 or 3 days a week. And we have just had amazing success with that, having the same person in our building. He's only working on our equipment. He's not working on our equipment in the shop and then going over here and working on this piece for an hour and then back to ours, and so on and so forth. We have had amazing success. The amount of downtime of our emergency vehicles is decreased by about 66% in a little over a year, or in that year period. And as we were talking through this with Law Committee, I think Mr. Schmidt put it best, is to have that human being who only works on that vehicle, that person who can stand there when that truck pulls in the bay and just simply say, well, that doesn't sound quite right. That person that really knows those vehicles inside and out, I think, has been that benefit. So we would like to continue down that path and hire an employee to fill that position full-time. It is going to have impact to our budget, obviously, as you have in front of you, of about $64,000 would be the total increase in our budget. What we will be able to do is move some of the money that we have previously paid to outside vendors to work on that apparatus, and eventually move that money into payroll. So that's how we came up with those figures. So I will gladly take any question on either one.
Ms. Knight?
I think this is a great idea because we know that our equipment is here. It's not somewhere else where it could get vandalized. We know that the person who's working on it, I just think it's a great idea, and I'm so glad we're going to do this.
Mr. Schmidt?
Law Committee went over this in quite a bit of detail, but the most important thing, as you mentioned, we've found in the private sector, and I'll refer to that as in my experience, that on key pieces of equipment, we wanted the same maintenance, usually our employee working on them, because as strange as it sounds a little, I don't know how to say it, they develop a rapport with that piece of equipment. And you can bring it sometimes up to spec, but the specs aren't ideal, and they're not the maximum utility of that particular piece of apparatus. So what the chief wants to do is really a very tried and proven approach, and I very much appreciate it. And we also did a lot of analysis of the cost analysis of what you're doing, and we add fixed costs very reluctantly as a council, and this is to our core, something that's very important to us, critical, it's an emergency. So Law Committee very enthusiastically supported this endeavor.
Anyone else? Mr. Tankersley?
Just one question. How far in depth is the individual able to do without having the piece of apparatus sent out? Like, say, if it's a motor problem or rear end problem?
So actually, I'm glad you asked that. We just sent out our first piece in a year and a month that we've had this outside contractor, and it is, I'm not a mechanic, so I'm going to give you the best terminology. It's the front end of one of the ladder trucks that has to be lifted, I don't know, so many feet in the air to repair. So any of that heavy lifting we'll still have to send out. Anything that gets major in terms of, taking the aerial ladder off the truck. So we're really mechanically, anything should be able to be done in-house that doesn't require that big heavy lift.
Mr. Schmidt?
Another comment that we learned in law committee, the qualifications and the certifications that are required by these individuals are pretty extensive, and we didn't realize that. At least I didn't realize it. And again, it adds credence to what the chief is trying to do.
Yeah, there's actually an NFPA standard, that's the National Fire Protection Standard on EVT. And it's funny, you know, when we were early on to this, I had somebody not in this group or in law committee, but somebody asked me, did you just make that name up? No, an emergency vehicle technician is part of the NFPA standard.
And Mr. Cook?
No, I think it's an excellent idea also. So as you had mentioned, other companies, they're seeing their staffing dwindle, which is an issue with many businesses. But to have that in-house and have that skill set in-house, that would be ours. I think that's an outstanding idea. Thank you.
Yeah, I will tell you, as we were doing the research on this, one of the craziest thing, Jeff Peck, who's one of our battalion chiefs, manages the fleet. And as we were really kind of looking at this very broadly in the beginning, I would not have thought to do this. He looked on Indeed.com, 25-mile radius from our firehouse for diesel mechanics. There were 228 postings just within 28 miles of our firehouse. So, you know, clearly the mechanics aren't out there like they used to be.
Anybody else? Thank you so much for all your
All right.
research and
Thank you, appreciate it.
John Creech is here to talk about ordinance 2023-40E and hopefully simplify a pretty complex issue for council with the PowerPoint.
Good evening, City Council. So this is emergency ordinance 2023-40-E. Just a little background. As you are aware, a large part of Sharonville is in the FEMA designated floodplain. The city adopted those regulations back in 1986. The latest code that we have was amended lastly in 2006. So FEMA, past couple of years, has been updating the flood insurance study for all of Hamilton County, and that flood insurance study is what is the legal basis for creating the flood maps. So they've updated the study as well as the maps for Hamilton County. They did that in 2022. And just a small part of Sharonville is actually included in the map update. So as part of that, we have to update our code and the maps as well. There are some text changes that were sent along by FEMA, and that is the attachment to the ordinance. So our existing code was prepared by FEMA, and each state, FEMA is the national organization, so each state oversees the various jurisdictions. So the Ohio Department of Natural Resources prepared our model legislation that most of the communities in the state adopt, and they prepared that working with us. So the one we already have on the books is the model code. So we're essentially updating that model ordinance with the new changes. So just to let you know, there's about 486 properties that are located in either the 100-year floodplain or the 500-year designated floodplain. I'll show you a map here in just a moment. So the one that is actually regulated is the 100-year floodplain. So as far as the changes go, I just touched on this. There are no changes to the mapped areas in Sharonville. Those remain the same. So if a property was in the 100-year floodplain, it remains. There are no new properties added as a result of this amendment. But the ordinance that is attached there does include some changes. There's definitions, new terminology. There are always changes in technology, engineering. So those FEMA recommended changes are included, as well as, like I said, the flood study and the map. And I'll show you an example of that with the floodproofing definition, just so you can see, you know, how what's on paper is actually put into practice. And there's also a requirement now that state and federal projects previously did not have to comply with their own FEMA rules. Now they do, so that's part of the code. And then we thought this was interesting that there's an accessory structure exemption for residential structures of 600 square feet or less. So they don't have to comply with the regulations, as long as they're not habitated. So this, if you look here, this is just a scan of one of the many maps that apply to Hamilton County. So that's on the left there, that small portion up in the left-hand corner. that's a little part of Sharonville. So because that is the only map change that impacts us. But because we're part of the overall Hamilton County mapping project, we have to update our maps. So that's the only change in the map. And really, there are no changes. So this is what I was talking about. This kind of shows the city in general and the flood areas that are subject to the floodplain regulations. So you see a couple different colors there on this aerial. The lighter blue, that is the regulated area. That's the 100-year floodplain. So if there's any development in there, they have to come to our office and get what's known as a special flood hazard area development permit, and then comply with the regulations. The lighter brown areas, that's the 500-year floodplain, and then the dark blue areas, that's the area which is basically centered on the Mill Creek and the various tributaries. That's the floodway, where essentially no development would be allowed there. So I mentioned there's some textual changes. So I just wanted to point out this is an example, local example of how we put it into practice. So Brighton True Edge Company up on Mosteller Road, they recently got approval to build a pretty large accessory building for a new piece of equipment that they store in this facility. And that property is in the floodplain. It's in the 100-year floodplain and is subject to flooding periodically. So this building is uninhabited. It's about 20,000 square feet, but I've got red arrows there, and they indicate basically a type of flood vent that allows, if it ever a flood comes along, the water will enter the flood vent and then wash out the other side. So it basically equalizes the pressure on a building that's caused by rising floodwaters. So the flood proofing was not actually part of our existing ordinance, but in this particular case, they went to the Planning Commission and got a variance to do this. So now that's actually part of the code. So the Planning Commission, they reviewed and approved these proposed changes in April this year, April 19th. We discussed at Law Committee on May 2nd, and because this is a requirement for FEMA that we adopt these regulations to remain in good standing with their flood insurance program, we need to adopt this, and the ordinance needs to be effective by June 7th. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
And then Resolution 2023-R6 is similar to Springdale's request from a few meetings ago. Basically, Westchester is asking to use a portion of our right-of-way for a flock safety camera off of Macaulay Road. Chief's here tonight to answer any questions and maybe explain it a little bit better than I just did.
Absolutely. I think you covered all the topics, but Westchester Township has flock cameras, as does our other surrounding neighbors. One of their cameras was in an area that was subject to being struck by a vehicle. They have asked to relocate it within our jurisdiction, just inside the corporation limit, behind some guardrails. So it's a more protected location. There are no standing utility poles, so it will be on the standard black flock camera pole that we have a couple set up on 42. Relatively nondescript, and it's the extent of it.
Any questions? Thank you. I think these are proving to be very beneficial.
They are. Had great success with it.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for the legislation.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lucas? Seeing none, I get the honor tonight, with the help of Anna, of introducing our essay winners for our Memorial Essay Contest. And I see one young lady here. Just one? Okay. So we're going to ask Carla to come up, and if we could maybe lower the microphone and read your essay to us, okay? And then I'm going to introduce two of my friends from the Sharonville VFW and the Ladies VFW.
Thank you.
Come on up, Mom. Come on up. See how that seat feels.
Thank you. Memorial Day by Carla Salinas. Did you know that Memorial Day was originally called Decoration Day? How do you celebrate this special day? Memorial Day is a day to honor men and women in the armed forces who died to protect America. It was once called Decoration Day. It is on the last Monday of May, though some people say it should be on May 30th every year. It used to be on May 30th for decades. People usually confuse it with Veterans Day, but those are two different holidays. We celebrate on the last Monday of the month. One way we celebrate is by wearing the colors of the American flag, red, white, and blue. Some people might throw parties and decorate graves with flowers and flags. Other people might have cookouts. Many people observe the national moment of remembrance at 3 p.m. So basically, the colors of the flag and the flag itself are a big part of this day. This day is important because it is a day that honors people who gave their lives to protect ours. You could have a personal connection with this day because a loved one died there, or maybe you just want to honor people who served us. In conclusion, Memorial Day is a special day for America and the rest of the world.
Okay, she is going to be one of our keynote speakers at our Memorial Day event, and I'm going to introduce you to my friends now from the VFW. If they might have a little something to say to you, and then we'll ask Anna to come back up and maybe tell us about our Memorial Day event.
Retailers jack the prices up 50 cents a gallon. A lot of people. Vacation. Thank you. With that, we have something from you.
Normally, it's just a facility gets the prize, but we don't. When it started,
He's the one that put the bug in my ear.
yes, so he's the one that decided we're gonna ask for
Thank you. Thank you, Mom.
Hello again. So,
Hi.
with that, thank you very much, Carla. I'm here to invite everybody and make it known that we do have our annual Memorial Day celebration. It is Monday, May 29th at noon at Patriot Point. So we invite all to come and join us. Any questions?
Thank you very much for all your work. She'll take them. Congratulations, Carla. And we have two other winners also, Allie and Genesis, and they will be joining us, I believe, on the 30th at our Memorial Day celebration, and they'll read their essays again. So you're going to get to do this all over again, but we appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much. And Mom, you're not going to hurt our feelings if you leave now, because this kind of gets to where the boring part of the meeting is. So you're not going to hurt our feelings. Congratulations, though, sweetheart. And that's all for my report. We'll move to our Clerk of Council, Mrs. Buhite.
Thanks. Oh, I just wanted to remind everybody about the schedule since we're not doing it the last Tuesday of the month. Our next council meeting is May 23rd, and then the summer schedule begins. So that, those dates, if you need a reminder, are June 20th and July 18th. And then also the Chinese Imperial 88 Inc., located on Lebanon Road, just made a liquor license transfer from another company.
Oh,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lucas asked me about a mayor's court case from some residents who came in, it was probably 2 or 3 council meetings ago, for some code enforcement issues on the Concerto Grandview area. So as far as an update on that, the individuals who are at that location came in. The way those cases usually work is Ms. Hollingsworth, our code enforcement officer, is present. She gives an update to the court, which she did on this instance. She indicated that the property was now in compliance in regards to the property maintenance issues. And if you recall, there were 2 separate issues. There was a property maintenance issue. There was also a zoning issue having to do with running a operation, whether it was for profit or not for profit, having to do with vehicle maintenance. So we were only in court for the property maintenance issues. Ms. Hollingsworth indicated those were all in compliance, and the individuals pled guilty and were sentenced by the court. They got a fine, and I think Ms. Hollingsworth is aware of the issues and is going to cite them back to court if it becomes an issue again. I mentioned the zoning issues as well at the time, and the individuals stepped out into the vestibule to discuss with Ms. Hollingsworth how they could, in their own words, stay in compliance. So hopefully we won't have any other issues. If anybody has any questions, you can ask me later or now.
Are there any questions?
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Residents that wish to be heard this evening, if you want to speak before council, come on up. Please give us your name and your address. Hi.
James Streeter. Address is 3901 Creek. First and foremost, normally I'd be here to say thank you. I think you guys normally do a really nice job. My wife and I bought our first house in Sharonville a couple years back. And like I said before, everything about this community has been phenomenal. It's involved, it's always improving, everything is always moving in the right direction. Unfortunately tonight, that's not what I want to discuss. Both myself and my wife and several other people here this evening own properties that we have put up as rental properties in Sharonville. Recently, maybe about 2 weeks ago, I came to find that short-term rentals are actually not allowed in the community. So I have a couple quick questions, and we'd like to kind of just get a little bit of an understanding of where we are and why we are where we are. So like I said before, there's probably a good 15 of us in total. This evening, I think we have 5 groups of us here that just recently received notifications that we were breaking an ordinance that does not allow short-term rentals, aka Airbnb or Verbo,
Right.
things like that. Like I said, I wasn't even aware that this was something that was not allowed. We had been operating for about a year until we even got the notification. So basically, what I can come to find is it states that it's a nuisance. It's pretty vague. The law doesn't say a lot about what and why. And so we were trying to understand, how is a short-term rental a nuisance versus a long-term rental? Big question.
You're talking about less than
ordinance.
30 days. You're talking about less than 30
less
days.
than 30, correct.
Right, you have to, because we have been getting complaints, especially in our community development department.
Okay.
We were getting multiple complaints from your neighbors.
Like,
And
do you guys have record of those that we're able to see? I
Okay,
was trying to sort
but
them, that's why I'm.
let's talk to one person at a time, first of all, please and thank you. Okay, we did get, and we all get phone calls about, our neighbor is doing this, similar as up on Concerto. Our neighbor is doing this and we don't like it and it's a problem in our neighborhood.
Right.
So that's what we're getting. Which property on Creek Road do you own?
We're the 3901, right across the street from the Baptist Church.
Okay, so you're up the hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Because I know down the hill, right behind Ameristop, That is a short-term, or it was a short-term rental.
Okay.
And there were several problems with the neighbor behind them.
Okay.
And they were being disrespectful, and they were partying, and that's not what these small neighborhoods want.
Yeah, of course.
And so that's why now we have the 30-day policy.
So this was enacted in 2019, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a couple of quick things. Again, short-term versus long-term. If you rent over 30 days versus under 30 days, of course you know a nuisance is a nuisance. An annoying neighbor, a loud neighbor, a neighbor that is breaking the law, whatever they may be. A nuisance is a nuisance. We don't want those. Everybody in the community here that's with me this evening, we do a couple things to go above and beyond. Like, for example, our property, we have cameras. We have cameras on the front, we have cameras on the back. We actively make sure that the types of people are coming in, they're vetted, to say it simply. We let families in. We let people that are here to see other families in the community in. Recently, we hosted a community or a group that was here for an event at the convention center. So in normal circumstances, I believe if these are managed properly, they are an asset to the community, which is allowing, obviously it's improving the tax base, it's driving people downtown, it's beneficial rather than a nuisance if managed properly. I completely understand what you're saying, and I respect.
Because not everybody manages them properly, and that's where you have to understand as a council.
Right.
We have to make the laws and the ordinances for the greater good of everyone.
Right.
So I personally would not want to live next door to an Airbnb, but do I rent them? You better believe it, I do.
Right.
I don't want that in my neighborhood.
Okay.
Okay.
So respectful.
Yeah.
So let me say, for example, I personally don't want to live next to a one-year rental, or somebody that's renting for
Right.
who has no investment in their property, doesn't cut their grass but every 20 days, doesn't trim their hedges, and leaves garbage in their backyard. That's
And-
my personal preference, but
Right.
No,
But we
what
also
I'm
have
trying to understand
ordinances to prevent that too. That would be a nuisance property, and that would be handled through our court system here.
if they're effective. So while I respect what you're saying, it is still personal property. It is my personal property, it's their personal property. How are we able to discriminate against above 30 and under 30? And how are we, one's not regulated at all in Sharonville, and one is absolutely not allowed in Sharonville.
The 30 days, basically, everyone looked at things similar to our area and places similar to our area, and that's how we came up with the 30 days.
Okay.
And a 1-week rental, they're just, they could be there to party. They could, you're saying you're not, but I'm also telling you that I could bring in and fill this place up with
Yeah.
neighbors,
Of course.
okay?
Of course.
That are gonna also complain. So we have to be fair to everyone that lives in Sharonville.
Okay.
You don't live in this house, I'm taking it.
This was my wife and I purchased our first home actually in Sharonville. And that
Okay.
was our original first home, yes.
Okay, but you don't live in that
No, we just
property?
recently moved to another property.
Okay, that's, yes.
So now there are several people like this evening, these two here, they actually do live in their property. And they have a part of the property that is leased, or was.
So
leased out for
they're more like a bed and breakfast
Essentially.
versus an Airbnb. Am I
Right, but
correct?
According to the regulations, that's still not allowed in the community.
Right.
So basically,
But it has been brought up to law committee
right?
to review it.
So while I do respect what you're saying about the nuisance, I absolutely don't want that next to me either. It would
Right.
be the most frustrating thing in the world. If you were to review, let's say, the last 10 people that came to our property, and I can basically speak for everyone here, 5-star reviews. These people are not on drugs, they're not partying, they are not doing all those things that both you and myself do not want next to our properties. They are people that are coming to see other people in this community. They are investing in this community. They are people that are coming to an event in Sharonville. They're not doing the things that we don't want. So I guess essentially what we're asking is, we as the property owners, we commit, we are invested in Sharonville. We're invested in the community. We offer an alternative to a hotel. Everybody on this board, you've all stayed in hotels. I'm certain you all have. And I lived on the road for 13 years. I traveled and opened restaurants. It's exhausting in a hotel. Some people don't want that. They want an alternative. They want to cook their own meal. You've stayed in an Airbnb.
Right.
You understand.
I get it.
So what we do is we go above and beyond. Our property, for example, we probably have $25,000 invested in just the furniture and the assets within inside of it to give them a really nice experience in a nice community. And we very clearly state quiet community, in a nice, quiet community, because that's what we're not selling a house to party in. We're selling a nice, quiet place for a family to come and stay as an alternative to a hotel. So anyway, we all have a lot in these. Some of them are handicap accessible. Literally, some of these people have gone as far as to making them accessible to somebody that needs a wheelchair to get into the property. They're monitored with cameras. I've never got a complaint from any of our neighbors directly. I think that everybody here can actually ask, except for one neighbor who just has a vendetta against the other one. We go through the steps that we feel are necessary to both protect the community while protecting our assets at the same time. We all have a lot in this. As you all know, houses aren't free. They cost a lot of money. And then on top of that, to put them together in this manner costs quite a bit of money. To get a letter that says, sorry, can't do it anymore, after we've already been operating with 5-star reviews for a year, it's problematic. Again, like I said, Sharonville's a phenomenal community. I think that you do a very nice job here. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but we feel like you are essentially discriminating against one segment of the rental market to maybe appease or appeal to a certain demographic of the community while ignoring the other one. Additional to that, we're getting targeted right now for the violations where if you go through the violations, there's a million of them. There's tall grass. There's a gutter falling off the house. There's the neighbor that literally doesn't care if the place burns up tomorrow and he's got a car leaking oil in the front yard. I'm not certain, but I would venture to say that these probably aren't being hammered as hard as we are right now. And the point is
Nope, that's very much so different.
so if there,
Go ahead, Casey.
I understand that this is probably, it's not an easy job to tell a guy,
No,
hey, clean up the front yard.
No, he actually is our law director, but he also prosecutes our cases.
Okay.
So, yes, no, we take it very, very seriously, and we listen to the neighbors. We listen to the people that complain.
Okay.
I'm not saying that anybody has complained about any of the people here. I don't know where you live. I have no idea.
Okay.
Okay? But I am going to tell you, we have some properties that are not like you.
Okay.
They're letting anybody and everybody in there. It
Just shouldn't happen.
Right, it's
Period.
just not like
Right.
you, okay? Very, very different. So when those things come to mind, that's why we're not trying to,
Discriminate
just
against
discriminate between one group or another. We came up with this saying, okay, you have to rent for 30 days.
Okay.
You have some kind of an investment, or you're here to work for Procter & Gamble or GE, or there's a reason you're gonna be in that place for 30 days.
Right.
And that's why we're saying is, your rentals are for how long, a week, 2 weeks?
Mine typically, for our place personally, we typically rent for about 10 to 14 days. The last group of people that came in, I believe they were for Honda possibly, but it was a group of 2 people, and they were here for a long period of time. The only time I ever saw them on my camera is at 7 in the morning when they went to work, and about 6 or 7 when they got home. Got one more pop-up for a guy to drop off a pizza, and they went to sleep. So,
Right.
A lot of the stuff we're renting, in their standards, as for Airbnb per se, you can't say it has to be to a little bit. You can say it has to be over a certain amount of days, but you can't say it must meet 2 weeks. You can say 30 days or under 30 days. So I understand what you're saying. And again, I respect what you're saying because I don't want this next to me either. But if we're invested in the community and there is a way that we can be managed, monitored, however you see fit, We just don't feel that it's fair to take us out of the rental equation for the community just because a handful of other people, which you are managing, are doing things the wrong way. You know, I mean, I don't know if there's an alternative. You know, maybe they need to have cameras, maybe they need
And that has
to
been brought up, alternatives have been brought up to Law Committee, and they have not yet had a chance to review it or look at it or talk about it. But that's where that would go after, you know, we have our ordinance, it's in place, and Donna is doing her job.
Okay.
Donna does her job very, very well. We all love
That's
Donna.
great. She's
Yeah.
very helpful.
I mean, you can get on our city website and see who hasn't cleaned up their yards and things like, it gives you addresses.
Oh, yeah,
So feel
very well
free
aware.
to jump on there and look at them because they're in violation and then they go to court or they're fixed. And that's the key is we want to get these fixed. We don't want our yards to be 10 feet tall or whatever.
Right.
You know, we want to have a community that people want to walk through, that people want to be living here. We want them to come here. It's not that we're trying to discriminate against you, but these were the laws that we put in place, the best that we could at the time with the information that we had.
Right, it's 5 years ago. It's
And
changed.
so, that being said, we understand that maybe you're on Airbnb because you have a bed and breakfast and you're living in your home and you're just renting out a room. That's kind of different than you renting out your whole house. So those are things that we're looking at right now and taking into consideration. And it will go through Law Committee. You're welcome to come to Law Committee and talk to Law Committee about how do you think, how would you, in my shoes, how do you take care of the rotten properties? How do you take care of those people that don't care?
I'd be absolutely happy to help.
Okay, because I can't make a judgment because you're good and he's evil. I can't make, so it has to be for everybody.
So this law or this ordinance, I'm sorry.
Right,
to
it's
be-
an
to
ordinance.
Be clear, this was not something that was voted on through the city. It was actually just voted on by council, correct?
Right, council voted on it.
Okay, so it's, okay. So
After
been asked
much
to ask a couple-
deliberation, and we've actually had people, groups of people, look at it, you know, professionals and
Right.
things like that. So it's not like we just decided to say, this is what we're doing. We did a lot of due diligence on the ordinance.
Of course, I mean, it's a heated topic.
So-
You know, Ohio's got a piece on the table right now where they're
Right.
considering, you know, not allowing people to discriminate against these in their own personal property. I understand it's the heated topic. I've been asked to ask a couple questions because there are some people here, for example, we have a couple couples here, so I'm not going to go through names. I'll try to speed it up for you. Some people are depending on this income. Of course, we are as well, but this is you know, secondary income for myself and my wife. But there are people that depend on this. There are also people here that will not be able to pay their taxes if they don't find some sort of resolution. So essentially, what we're saying is the alternative is to go to 30 days, which subjects us to a less than desirable tenant. They're not rated on 5 stars. They don't care about your property. One of the people here just told me the last time they did that, it took $12,000 to get the place cleaned back up. A lot of people don't care about your property when you rent for 12 months and above. They're, okay, it's not mine. I beat a hole through the wall. I'm leaving. They have an $800 deposit. Good. It's going to cost a lot more than that to fix it. So that's their alternative, or they're forced to sell the property. Regardless, some people in this room have built their...
And they're all welcome to come up and talk. You don't, you
We-
guys are all
we try
welcome to talk.
Keep it simple for you. You know, one of us speaks just because, you know, it's a lot. But what they wanted to know is, you know, in these circumstances, they're put in a bind, and they want to know, if you're in those shoes, how would you feel? How would you handle it? Because these are, you know, again, this isn't, I just bought I didn't buy a bicycle to rent to somebody. I bought a $150,000 to $250,000 house. It has a mortgage, it has taxes, it has a lot of things invested into it. And like I said before, each one of these takes right about $25,000 to do it right. And it's all sitting inside of that house right now. And they want to know, and I'm speaking on behalf of them, if you were on our shoes right now, what would you do? Because we have essentially, like I said, somewhere between 150 to 250 plus interest invested in these. And we're just saying, no, because it's a nuisance. And again, from our perspective, it's a nuisance against one type of rental property. If I paired it up next to a 30-plus property, I can go through the whole community. Again, I know Sharonville well. I love this community. It's great. But I can go and show you how many long-term rentals are just garbage, and they do not care about this community. Whereas us, we are shining, spitting images of what it should be.
Yeah, that is also being addressed at the state level. Home ownerships and things like that and rentals.
Right.
Those are also being, but we go to the person who owns those homes and, okay, your renter's not taking care of it. So we then go
What we're
to
saying
them.
is
So
simply
we're forcing
keeping our
them
hands
to,
up.
yeah.
And we are, again, if you want to, go grab the list, take a drive around and look at these houses. I promise you they will be the shining images of what you want Sharonville to be. You know, the
Not
first
all of
thing we did in ours, we completely put new landscaping in the front yard. Do we have to? No. But in the short-term rental world, aesthetics matter. So you're selling the way this place looks, the way it feels, the comfort they're going to feel. And again, we paint a picture. Quiet neighborhood, great for family. You know, there's so many things we do to actually drive them here. And again, there's a carnival right up the street here. They'll come to that. There is, like she was just talking about, what happens during Christmas, you know, down here on the loop. You know, a friend of mine owns business here. I understand all these little businesses, Rockefellers, all these little things. We're driving money, a tax base to this community. On top of that, if it's approved and it's done properly, again, I respect that, properly, there is tax revenue generated off of each one of these houses that goes to the community as well. We're invested. We feel that we're doing things the right way in the community, and we want to know, you know, what is it going to take to get the same, essentially the same equality that a 30-day rental is going to get? Because we are invested. And again, I can guarantee if you, each of you, wrote down 5 things that are 911 right now that must be on every Airbnb for me to say, yes, I'll allow it in the community, we'll probably already have them done in our houses. We're there. We just need to know what we can do to make this
Okay.
happen.
Can you give us your name and your address, please?
My name is Robin Ritchie. My husband and I live on Kemper Road, East Kemper, and it's 5609. It's the White House that literally had vines growing over it. It was an eyesore. The entire interior was destroyed.
This
My
is
husband-
12 years ago. I'm
Yes.
Jeff Ritchie.
This is my husband. And we have put over $300,000 building this beautiful house. We built a handicapped, fully equipped, one-bedroom apartment in our basement.
For my mother.
For his mother, we put in driveways, we put in ramps, we've got a garage that we just spent $20,000 on, so they'll have a covered carport for the businessmen and the nurses, so they don't feel afraid to go in and park, and they can plug in their electric cars. We've got, our whole life is invested in this. We retired because of our health. It's in our home. And we've retired because I could make enough money to do this. I've been a nurse for 47 years. I physically cannot be a nurse anymore. I have arthritis. I can't start IVs. I can't hold the babies anymore. I can't do it. You take my Airbnb and tell me I have to get a 30-day rental, I won't have any. There are no 30-day rentals out there, except people who can't get an apartment, can't get accepted by an apartment to get into an apartment because they have bad credit or they've been a nuisance somewhere else. Those 30-day people are not the people I want in my apartment. My apartment's gorgeous. I have a complete 5-star rating. Every person that's been in my house, I have entire, how many do we have? Like 120 reviews of how lovely it is. We back up to the park. Their entrance has a porch. They look out at the park. They all go to the park. We tell them how to get passes. They shop in your restaurants. I cannot survive there. I will either have to go back to Kroger's and find a job because I can't do nursing anymore. He can't because of his back.
I'm an engineer. and I
But we have
back issues
spent
that
our entire
never let me work.
life savings on this house that everybody in our neighborhood has said, you have brought our property values way up. If you've been on Kemper Road lately, my house, the new house that just went in, that's $500,000, $600,000, 2 doors down. There's another new house that's going in, 3, 4, 500. We have the loop of all those new homes
Julianne Drive.
on Julianne Drive. We we love Sharonville. We've been here 12 years. We love living here.
We're very close with our neighbors,
But you've just cut off my fingers.
and our neighbors have absolutely zero complaints.
They all said,
they
we'll
will
sign
come
any
and speak in
petition.
our defense or our behalf.
Driveway goes down below. They don't even know there was an apartment down there.
And
They
it-
even knew there was one there.
And again, it's not your properties
But you're giving me no other
that are,
option. You're
that,
saying,
no, I'm telling you that it's going back to law committee.
but how long I can't live without income. We can't stay.
Law committee meets next week.
Are we gonna get some kind of I would pay, if you tell me that I have to pay a price, which we do make a fair amount of money, I will admit it. We do. I bring in, and I'm always booked, and they're all professional. There are people from P&G, Kroger's. I have somebody there from Kroger. She's actually staying a 30-day only because they're saving up to buy a house. I know them. They've been there to our home before, so I trust them. These people know me by first name. I've had people come 5, 6, 7 times to our house because they feel safe. It's a safe neighborhood. They're locally centralized. That's the hugest. I let dogs come, and they love it. You can't bring a dog to the hotel. Not to mention, I've had handicapped people who go, oh my God, to have enough space to turn my wheelchair around and cook a meal. Thank you. You've just cut off our fingers. I don't know what else to say. And I'm not trying to make a big sob story for us because these people have done the exact same thing. They've given their hearts and souls into these things.
Airbnb gives us $1 million umbrella
insurance.
protection if anyone causes any damage to our property. This is why we have it.
I won't let somebody say, oh, can I stay another day and give you $20? No. You go through Airbnb, I need that $1 million protection, always. And I want to see that you've been vetted. They vet them by their license. They vet them by if they have good or bad ratings. I'll tell you, I've only had to give 2 who I would never rent again. They will never rent an Airbnb again. So those people that had those parties, they'll never rent an Airbnb again because Airbnb doesn't allow it.
But the owners don't care.
But no,
And that's what we're dealing with. They're living in neighborhoods where the owners are not being responsible renters.
I'm having trouble getting, understanding, they should be cited, but are they 3-day rentals coming back and back and back? Because I have 3-day, 5-day, 6-day, 8-day, whatever the.
I don't know, I've never.
Nobody comes 30 days, nobody, except this one particular girl, once.
Once in a while, we'll get an engineer from GE or a solar
Right.
company that'll come in, but it's few and far. And if you get somebody in there for 30 days.
I don't know what they've done down
To
there.
get them out, you can't just say, oh.
Okay.
I don't want a 30-day renter.
Okay,
In
But
15
you're saying
days-
that's the better. You're saying short-term is bad,
no,
long-term is
I'm
good.
saying that
That's
we're
what you
going
have.
to review the ordinance.
We would so appreciate
I'm saying we're going to review our ordinance. I'm not gonna guarantee anything. I have 7 people that vote up here. I have 3 people that are in law committee. If you want to come to law committee, you're more than welcome to come. I can also give you the people that aren't you. And I'm not saying, you guys sound like you're fabulous. I love the people, my Airbnb is on North Lake and it's a floating house, so that's where I go.
Come and approve it. I don't care if you.
But it's in the middle of a lake. It's not in a community, it's in the middle of a lake. So, it's a little different, it's a resort area. So it's not in a city, it's at Norris Lake, it's in a resort area. You have to come up here so it's on, yeah.
How would you feel if we worked with law committee, and, because we know how to keep the wrong people out of the problem, 100%. The ones that do care, we can work with law committee to.
You guys could be with law committee till you're blue in the face. How are you gonna change the other 15 that aren't doing the right thing? That's our problem that we have to.
A very, very proactive regulation.
So we have to have nuisances And that's what we're calling this a nuisance right now. It could be that the state says, no, we can't call it a nuisance, then we'll come up with other ordinances to handle those nuisances, you know? When I have 5 people in one neighborhood calling, or I have a young lady in a wheelchair, that is sitting there living with these people partying constantly at her window because the properties are so close. Huh? No, they were not. This was back in 2018. Now they're 30-day renters.
Yeah, see, the other thing is, yeah, Airbnb
So-
brought up and put on, you know, the adult camps, if you will. They when they first started out, they were.
Okay, so what do I say? Only Airbnb people can do this, but if you're the other, what is it, VRBO, you can't do it?
No, it would have to be, it would have
You know,
to be neutral and across all.
We have to be fair to everyone in our community, and that's what we were trying to be when we made the law. I don't know when you guys purchased your properties, I know nothing about them, but I'm saying we were trying to be fair to all of our residents when this went into effect.
So would it be
So if you-
feasible to say that we can at least
Come up with some proposals.
the law committee
Mhm.
about how to manage them proactively?
Right.
to where it can become an asset instead of a problematic issue.
And yours is different than his. You live in your house. So that's a very different situation because you have to live with whoever's in your home.
Now, but
Yes.
I want to be careful there too.
Right.
Because we've also heard complaints from
Right.
folks that have neighbors who rent out a room of their house and have expressed the concerns that they have of traffic coming in and out the side of the house to go into the back door.
Right.
Now, having heard and knowing a little bit about your situation, it's a little different than that one is. But, I mean, all of these are what go into creating legislation. So we took a period of time when this ordinance
yeah.
went into effect, and basically we did a moratorium for a period of time so that we could study the issue, so we could hear from people in the community about what was going on. We tried to share that information out to the community so that we could get this kind of feedback, and what we heard was crickets, to be honest with you, as far as folks that want Airbnbs or VRBOs or short-term rentals. We heard nothing. What we heard was very loud concerns on the part of our community that we don't want short-term rentals in our residential neighborhoods. We like the idea of knowing who's staying in the houses next to us. We like the idea of knowing who our neighbors are, who the people are, and there's a value to that in creating neighborhood and creating safe spaces. And so that is part of, in addition to the complaints of
Right.
the parties and the other things that go on. So the character of what is a residential neighborhood and what are uses that are appropriate within a residential neighborhood are those kind of competing balances that
Yes.
the council has when they come to these decisions and consider that. We're not making any decisions here tonight.
No.
You know, the law, I mean, they went through that process several years ago and said, this is the policy as a city that we want to follow. And I know that some of you didn't start doing Airbnbs or anything else until after the legislation went into effect. And I'm not pointing fingers because I all know, and we hear it all the time when we deal with zoning violations. I didn't know I couldn't do that. I didn't know I could build a fence. I didn't know I could do this. And sometimes we have to say, well, too bad, you got to tear it down, you know? So because this is why. But the fact that the due diligence that wasn't practiced in order to engage in a business, which is what is basically happening, is not something that you can really blame the group of folks up here on. Now, where we can go is we can start from here, and you're doing it the right way, is you're petitioning your government to say,
Right.
we would like to be able to operate it. And these are the kinds of issues that we want you to look at to try to allow us to do so. And that's exactly what I think this body will do and always has done. Whether it comes out in your favor or not, I don't know. None of us can tell you that tonight because there's a lot of competing interests that have to be balanced. That some of them you've heard here this evening, some of them you've shared this evening, but that's what the purpose of committees and that dialogue and that discussion is about. Now, that means it might hurt for a little while because you've created or started a business that you didn't look into what the regulations were in order to run this business in the city of Sharonville. So there might be some impact as a result of that on the short term. It may continue into the long term, depending on what a majority of council decides they want to do. But we're not going to make those decisions here tonight. So we're happy to hear anything else that you want to share tonight. And go from there.
Get in there. No, we'll let you, I'm gonna let you speak, but add to your point, law committee is next Tuesday here. It's you'll have to go through our administration, but law committee is next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. We can put you on the agenda. It would be very helpful if you would come prepared with some written things, yeah. Bring some notes like you had tonight. Bring suggestions, bring VRBO rules. We don't know VRBO rules. I don't have one, so I just know I'm a really good renter. They love me, and I'm allowed to go back every year, so.
Would you say that things have changed with those organizations?
I don't know. I can tell you, well, not anymore. The people that, their floating house, they no longer use VRBO. They do it on their own, and it's just people that have rented from them that they like. So they send us an email in January. What weeks do you want?
My biggest concern was that these rules and laws and ordinances were made without any representation for the people that we passed.
Well, we tried. We did. This was not just done overnight. It wasn't put through as an emergency. It was vetted. We looked into other cities. We put things out there. We have a first reading, which means, okay, if I put something out tonight, I'm going to do if I do a first reading, you have 2 more readings to come and present your case at council if you don't like it. And we post them. They're always posted over here, our legislation. It's always posted over there. You can call and ask us. You can watch ICRC if you want to know what's going on in the city. Mr. Creech in the back there, he's the director of the department that helps set the rules, and the lady who follows the rules works for him. So make a phone call. Hey, what's your city's rules on this? And that's what the mayor was saying. You didn't. If you'd have called us, we'd have walked you through it and said, here's what we have, here's what we're asking you to do, or whatever. Just like putting up a fence. People are like, well, I didn't know I had to put the fence, the pretty side, to the neighbor. Well, yeah, you do, because the neighbor doesn't want to see the ugly side of the fence. That's for you to look at.
We looked at the county law, and I think that when we looked at it, everything was agreed, so we understood we're okay. And so, understood.
Okay, so that's all we're saying. We're going to move forward, and we're willing to listen, which we're doing tonight. We're willing to listen. We're willing to have you come to our committees and work. It's 4 o'clock. Mr. Schmidt is in charge of it. It's here in this building, and it's next Tuesday, I believe, right, Mr. Schmidt? So it's next Tuesday. It's a work in progress, but like he's saying right now, Mrs. Hollingsworth has told you that you can't do it. So right now, the city is saying you can't do it. Right, you're okay for now. So that's what we're just saying. We change ordinances, we create ordinances for the good of the community, and that's why we're up here. So that's why we do this, okay?
Again, one last thing, I'm gonna step back. I understand why you would have written this as 2019, because if we would follow Airbnb in 2019, I would have written this. There was no regulation within there. It was,
Y'all come.
And now they have a lot of, you're not allowed to have parties banned permanently from the app.
And I think some of that came from some of the communities that you watch on the news, where they rented an Airbnb and everything went to pot. It's, Okay, she wants to speak. Hi. What's your name?
Pam Harbaugh.
Pam Harbaugh. Okay.
Mateo Maria's mom.
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay.
How's she doing?
Hi, Mike. You recognize me?
I do.
Okay. She's doing really good. She lives in Seattle. Sorry, I'm not.
Okay.
Trying to digress.
Go ahead.
I think a lot of people here used to be teachers or former teachers. So I think something that I want to say is that when you were dealing with your students, do we work with the complying students or do we work with the ones that are going to be breaking the rules? So I think that that's something I wanted to just lay out there. And the reason I wanted James to support me was because I'm a very nervous speaker. But one of the things I think that we're forgetting is that as an Airbnb, if we get any, like for instance, I have a very open line with my neighbors. If they ever call me and say, hey, this is what your tenant is doing, I can evict them immediately.
Where is do you still live up on Cottingham?
No,
Okay.
that's my parents.
Okay.
So a little bit of sentimental is I was born and raised in Sharonville, so I've been a resident of the city of Sharonville for over 55 years. However, my current work right now is with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and so that's too much of a commute. So I've had to buy a house up there and live up there. And so this is the house that I own on Sharondale is very sentimental to me. It was the very first house I bought on my own. So when I left it, I was heartbroken. So I wanted to keep it because my goal is to eventually, when I retire, that I can move back to that house. And I fix that house up because I think that that's where I'm gonna live, you know. And so anything that I remodel, I do it at the highest level because I'm thinking, this is where I'm gonna live. I want the comfort. I want the fancy stuff, you know. I want the pretty tile. And so that's my goal for this house. And so in the short term, while I'm, you know, still working, I wanted to be able to rent the property. I had a long-term tenant, which you're welcome to look at them. I didn't get them in color, but this is over 200 photos. I actually dialed it down a little bit of the damage that they did in less than 2 years of living there. It cost me close to $15,000 to renovate it. I lost 3 months worth of time because I was trying to fix it. I was trying to get people in there to fix it. So the difference is that one of the things that we're forgetting is that as an Airbnb, when the property is an Airbnb, if my neighbors call me up, and like I said, I have an open line to my neighbors, known them for a long time, if they call me and say, this is what this person's doing, I'm able to evict them immediately. I can call them up, you're locked out, you need to leave, please leave. And it happens immediately. Do you know how long it took me to get my long-term tenant out of my house? Over a year. And so that meant, and I found out she was dealing drugs. She was getting into arguments, like fist fights with the neighbor. She was yelling at my neighbor's kids, which I won't tolerate. And I kept telling my neighbor, call the police, call the police. She doesn't want to call the police because she doesn't want to have this kind of turmoil. And so you're going to have some of those kind of neighbors. But the good thing is with the Airbnb, I'm able to say, no, this isn't okay. I'm not going to tolerate this. This is my house. I love this house. Please leave. And I can do that in a 24-hour notice. I don't even think it has to be 24 hours, right, James? Where are you? Yeah.
You call them, and if they break rule or regulation, they give them a notification. They have, I think, up to 4 to 6 hours to leave the premises. If they don't, which we all have lock keys where I can go on my phone and lock the door permanently.
I have
They
a
will
code
not
to
be
do
able
it.
to come and get their stuff until police officers called and they are escorted off the property. Again, when you made this ordinance, none of these sorts of things existed. But it's a new world now, and they can be very tight. So we're not trying to bring garbage to the community by any means. And if anything, we're trying to bring people that will respect the community, spend money while they're here, come back with great things to say about this community, and hopefully come see us.
Okay.
I actually put more into my home now because I need it to be more welcoming. I need it to be able to attract the higher level type of people that were wanting to spend the $150 a night, where a lot of people don't want to spend $150 for a hotel room. Why would they want to do it for a house? And so that means that they're going to be a higher level type of person. They're getting vetted. And so I'm putting more money into my house now than I probably would have done when my long-term tenant was there. Because when I did go and fix things, she would trash it immediately. And I keep saying she, but she was married and then had 2 kids. But the rumor around the neighborhood was that there was cars constantly coming and going. And then when she finally was out, I realized, everybody that was coming into my house, because, I've never smoked marijuana, so I don't know what it smells like. And so the people were like, nope, that's marijuana. That's what's dripping down your walls on your house. And like I said, I have over 200 photos, because some of the cleaning that I was doing was incredible. When I pulled the refrigerator out and I wiped it down, it just like dripped. It was just so disgusting. And where like now with the short-term tenants, a cleaner comes in, cleans the house, it's spotless, so that when the next person comes in, it's clean, it's pristine. And yeah, it's just, to me, it's a much better setup. I don't have to fight somebody for the payment, because with her, it was always late, or there was there was always something going on, and things were always constantly breaking. And like I said, it was close to 15,000, which meant 2022. I was in what do you call it, the red, where you're in the negative. So my accountant, when I showed up to her and said, how much am I going to have to pay Sharonville taxes, she was like, nothing, because you didn't make any money. And even to the point that she was like, we're going to have to roll some of that debt over into another, 2023. So that's heartbreaking to think that, I put so much money into this house, and it's my baby, because it was the very first house I bought. I have to go back to it. It's where I
It
raised
sounds
my
like
2
he's your
children.
spokesperson. I'm gonna.
No, he's my support, because I'm nervous.
I'm gonna assume you'll be here next Tuesday. Okay.
He is a good
All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Question, actually, and then a comment. First, a comment. So just so you know, I've got a report here. It's from our community development, dated 4/25. Probably off by a few, but just counting down, there's 119 violations on this list. So they are very proactive going throughout the city, just so you understand. Okay.
Oh, I talked to,
Donna.
John. Yeah. Yeah. So I just want everyone, and you and everyone listening, yeah, they're very proactive. So the next thing would be for I'm going to for the legal. So at 30 days or more, you have to evict a person?
at 30 days or more by law, anywhere in the state of Ohio, you cannot ask someone to leave a property. At 30 days or more, even if they are within our realm, Airbnb, anything over 30 days becomes a long-term rental. So at that juncture, if somebody stays and says, I don't want to go, they're stuck. That's why we prefer short-term, because, again, we go through, everybody in this room, we have top-notch, so we vet these people, so we don't have to go through a
I'm just trying to calibrate myself. And then under 30 days, what I'm hearing is Airbnb says you've got to go, whatever.
state law.
So what if someone says no?
You can, under 30 days, I can call and I can essentially, in layman's terms, evict them
Okay,
myself.
but what if they don't want to? I guess what I'm getting at is like you're one long-term tenant who would leave and it took a year. What if someone's rented for a day, you got to go, and they said, no, I'm staying here?
By law, we can have them taken out.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you want, you can verify with the police.
But
department.
I've got a bunch of
Yeah, but-
people with many years of a legal background here, so
I
that's just for me.
anticipate
Thank you.
having a spirited discussion at Law Committee.
Perfect.
So,
Thank you.
couple things. The only thing I disagree with Mr. Credion on this issue is his comment that you cannot ask them to leave. You can ask them to leave, but if they don't, then you have to follow eviction proceedings. Prior to that, on a short-term residence or rental or whatever, law enforcement will help remove them physically. So I very much appreciate your professional presentation
Yes.
tonight. As law director, I try to keep an open mind. I do not get a vote on council, and that's probably good for you, because I believe what you said, which was, I don't want this next to my house. Having said that, there is one other thing I disagree with you on, as far as the state regulation. So there was a proposed state regulation, House Bill 563, that was in the last General Assembly, the 2021-2022 General Assembly. It passed out of committee and it died on the House floor. So when that happens in a General Assembly, it doesn't get resurrected in the next General Assembly. Now we are in the 2023-2024 General Assembly, and there is no pending short-term. No, I looked it up today. There is no pending short-term rental property legislation through the state of Ohio. And the last legislation that was pending was titled, and I'm looking at it right here, Limit Local Regulation of Short-Term Rental Property. Now, whether or not that was constitutional under the Ohio Constitution is to me a big question, because the Ohio Constitution has a provision colloquially known as home rule, meaning that local municipalities get to decide how to run their municipalities, not the big boys up in Columbus. So if that did pass the House floor and then go to the Senate and pass the Senate and then get signed into law by the governor, there would be a lot of municipalities, including Sharonville. I would encourage my voting council members to join in legislation or litigation, probably that would go through the Ohio Municipal League, to fight that as being not constitutional. That's my 2 cents. Sorry it took a while.
It's not on the table. There's a handful of people that are trying to resurrect it, if you will. It's behind the lines right now, but, obviously, at a certain point, if they get enough people to sign on it, they're gonna have to do something.
I'll take your phone number. Yeah, okay, did you want to speak, sir?
Yeah, real quick. My
Okay,
name's Rich
thank you.
Sturm.
Because we still got a meeting to get to.
Yeah, 3944 Beaver Creek. And I just want to say, my wife and I, we've got 4 that we do long-term rentals, 2 that we do Airbnb in Sharonville, Glendale, and 2 in Florida. And out of all the places, I should say, our long-term rentals, we try to keep immaculate. We do, we keep an eye on them, we drive by, we check on them. In Florida, we have somebody that comes in and checks on them. Our Airbnbs, when the tenant leaves, we have people right over there cleaning up. We make sure it looks good. We want our customers to give us good reviews, and we want to pick people that have, 5 stars to come and stay. If you get 5 or 6 people wanting to stay at your Airbnb, you can kind of be choosy of who you want. So, I mean, it's to our benefit to keep them nice. Now, I can tell you, I've had 4 or 5 tenants, long-term, that to go through the process of evicting people and having them asking for continuances and everything else while they tear apart your rental and sell the air conditioning for copper and everything else they do. To me, long-term rentals can do a lot more damage, be a lot more difficult to get a hold of or get rid of than a short-term, Airbnb, as everybody said. So I just want to throw my 2 cents worth in, and, I look forward to coming maybe next Tuesday and seeing if something can be done.
Do you live on Beaver Creek, or do you?
No, I don't live in Beaver Creek. I live actually in Evendale right now.
Okay.
Does Evendale allow Airbnbs, do you know?
That's a good question. I don't think one in Evendale. I do have
Mr.
2 of them
Creech?
in Glendale.
Mr. Creech? No, they do not. I didn't think so.
And I don't think Blue Ash does either. I think Blue Ash
No.
also. So, I mean, okay. I was just curious.
They don't have them. I mean, to be very honest, they don't have them. They're just under the radar.
One more person, I apologize, I wasn't expecting. I am also an Airbnb owner. My name is Holly Yoder, and I live we own 10770
Lemery.
So yes, we're one of these people, and I didn't come prepared to speak today. The person or persons who turned me in was actually a city worker, so we have had no complaints by any neighbors. It was actually somebody in the city calling or looking up Airbnbs and calling based off the fact that we had one on Airbnb. So We do know our neighbors. We bought our house and completely remodeled it, and we are over here all the time. We don't live in Sharonville, but I'm a realtor, and so I'm familiar with HOAs, but typically with HOAs, at the purchase of your house, you will read through that sign that you've seen in a homeowners association or the ordinances or regulations on those. With this regular city, I, one, had no idea that this was a thing that people were closing it down. My request is when we come back next week, which I will, is that you guys will maybe consider adding some things that will help regulate and keep people honest and, you know, do the things that you're saying, like they said, through Airbnb, there are quiet hours, there is absolutely no smoking, there are no pets, there's no partying, we have cameras, we do talk to our neighbors, we have our yards professionally mowed, and I would not complain about the people around me because I believe that people should be able to do in their own home what they want to do. That's my personal opinion. If somebody wants to have somebody come stay with them, then they should be able to. If a guy wants to have some junk in his yard, which I don't think is very pretty, and that's the only complaint I've had at my house was the guy across the street from me has junk in his yard 24/7 and multiple, I think it's Halloween, Christmas lights, everything all up at the same time. It's been there since we purchased the house, it's still there. So I just would ask that you guys would consider, you know, possibly adding a little bit more to instead of just saying no Airbnb, like with the city of Cincinnati, there's a permit you can purchase, and, you know, at least you're invested. I don't agree with that either and wouldn't want to do that, but it would be better than what we're dealing with right now. And so, yes, I would appreciate you guys reconsidering some of these things because, like the others said, I'm a super host, I guess they would call it, and that means every person that's ever stayed at our place loves it. We've had people that are just left there that came back for a 50-year reunion at Sharonville High School. There were 3 ladies that went to school together and they came back for a reunion. We've had guys that came and trained the Blue Ash Police Department come and stay. I mean, we've never had somebody there that was questionable in my mind, and you can go beyond what Airbnb does and vet them yourself. Airbnb says only these type of people are allowed. We have to have, you know, certain regulations. But beyond that, I can say I have to talk to this person, ask them why they're here, what they're doing here, and I say whether they can stay in my house or not. And then I'm watching constantly to see if anybody's doing anything outside the house they're not supposed to be doing. So, anyways, I do think that there has been a misunderstanding with Airbnbs. I think that it can be monitored better and properly, and I don't know the people, you know, I haven't heard of the people. I know there's people that probably don't or uphold what they're supposed to. And
There are parties going on, there are people in and out, there are people parking on the streets the wrong way, there are people that are just not good neighbors.
But I would say that would probably be the same with long-term renters as well.
And I'm
There
sure
are
it
people
is.
that, you know, the people that rent our properties are very well qualified, which means they have money, they can pay for things. You have long-term renters in there because they don't have credit and can't buy a house of their own a lot of times.
Okay.
So the people that we're dealing with are completely different in my opinion, and I don't want to deal with a long-term renter because my husband travels a lot and I'm the one that would have to be going and asking them for money. Airbnb gets my money for me. I do not have to go request one person for money. So there are a lot of pros, and I would say way more pros for short-term rental than a long-term rental than cons. consider or maybe add some extra rules that we would have to abide by, and if we didn't abide by those rules, then you can shut us down. But I would say, for the most part, it is bringing a lot of good things to the community. So, thank you.
Okay. Okay, guys, we've been on this for quite some time, and we still have a meeting to get done. We understand your point. I'm not trying to shut you down. We understand your point. We've invited you to Law Committee. We've asked you to do your due diligence. Come back to us with some items. You know, like she suggested, you have to pay a fee. You have to do this. Maybe you have to get your house inspected. You know, those are things that we can work out, we can listen to. We understand you're not happy you got written up. We understand that, but also understand that our point of view is each one of us sitting up here has gotten phone calls about bad people. And I'm not saying they're you. I'm not saying they're not you. I don't know. I don't know where your properties are, okay? So come see us next week and let us get on with council, okay?
And it also
Mr.
goes on
Schmidt.
Facebook, that alerts us also. Goes on, some of these are posted on Facebook also.
No,
No,
complaints.
complaints.
Yeah, no, he's talking about the complaints. The complaints.
Just a quick comment. I chair the law committee. Mr. Lippert is our law director. He will be really at that meeting, and he will really field many of your suggestions. And that's what we invite you to come with proposals and things that you think we can make it different that would help you and still protect a neighbor. Now, one thing that I'm thinking back in my mind, would you want to have a home kind of, you select your people very carefully. But do the neighbors know that? And the current word is, if you see something, say something. So if I'm sitting on my front porch and I see different people walking in, I've never seen this guy before. I don't know who he is. Do I call the Sharonville police? He might be he might be Jim, I don't know. But that's the concern that the people, there's this flow of people that they don't know. Now, you've said you've vetted them, and said that's just food for thought. But you have to really look at it in a different perspective. And as I said, Mr. Lippert is there. He doesn't vote on that committee, but we will, any suggestions are welcome, and he's very good. And it's a very open committee. It's not hostile or anything like that. We want to work together to do what's best for our city and our citizens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go on. Council committees, community develop. Oh, Mr. Schmidt. Thanks. I didn't see him over there. He's not in his normal seat.
Somebody took my normal seat, sorry. Tim Schmidt, 12215 Pickwick Place.
And
was
11
just
more.
What's that?
No, it's okay.
I was just wondering, Houck Road, that's been brought up a couple times this evening. Is there any timeline on when the construction will get done on Houck Road? I haven't even seen anybody working there for a while.
We do not have a definite time frame for when it's done. There is more work to be done. There's issues with the railroad that are continuing to cause problems. There's issues with some unexpected wires that were running underneath the, are they, I forget whose lines they are, but there's only supposed to be one. There turned out to be four. So they have to get another permit because their permit was declined. So the hope is that we'll see this project done by the end of the summer. I'm cautious to give anybody a date because we know there are issues and there have been ongoing issues. So we are doing the best to spur along our partners who are working that project because we want it open and completed just as much as you and every other person we hear from. But that's kind of where we're at right now. I wish I could tell you the new date for it to be done is X. We just don't have that to be able to give out yet.
The other thing I would mention, when you go up, going north on Reading Road and you switch over to get onto Main Street, there's a sign there that says Weiss Carver Road Detour and has you turn left onto Creek Road. You can't do that.
Oh, that's because we
We'll
pulled
have
up
to
Creek
double,
Road.
yeah, we'll have to.
Correct.
We'll
I thought
have
we
to
had that
update it.
corrected, but we'll check that and make sure that, I thought the detour was going all the way down to the end and turning around, but
Well, that's
maybe there was one they just didn't take.
They got the sign there to turn onto Creek Road.
Yeah,
You are correct, Tim, because a citizen brought it up to me, and it is there, so.
we'll get it taken down. That was obviously where the detour was until we
That's
started
where,
going.
that's where it was till you start working on Creek Road, yeah.
We'll get somebody up there
That
to
is
see if we
correct.
can't temporarily take that down. And hopefully, by July 4th, that'll be, well, by a couple of days after July 4th, because we're going to shut down that piece of Creek Road for the 4th on the loop. So it's going to be shut down the 2nd through the 5th,
The part between Main Street and Reading Road?
the part between Main Street and Reading Road on Creek. And so it's going to be shut down from the 2nd through the 5th in order for us to set up and tear down for the 4th on the loop issue. But we will certainly, which is what it was designed to do. I mean, that's what we wanted to do in order to bring about these great fun activities in our downtown loop. But we will work on getting that sign out for the time being.
I do want to mention, the people were talking about how bad long-term tenants are. We have long-term tenants, and we have no problem with them, so.
It is what it is, what it is. Okay, let's go. Mr. Wilson, Community Development.
Yes, at the jeopardy of extending this meeting, I do have a short report. The Board of Zoning Appeals and Planning Commission will meet tomorrow night. Board of Zoning Appeals meets at 6:30. There are 4 agenda items. The first one is a variance request to store a utility trailer on Sharon Meadows Drive. There's a second, the second item is to request to allow a storage of a utility trailer on Wilma Drive. The third is to allow the storage of a horse-drawn carriage in the driveway at Centerdale Road. And the fourth request is to permit the addition of a gravel driveway and to build an oversized accessory structure on a property at Carpel Street.
All right.
The Planning Commission also has four items, but I'll save you the rest of the report. How's that?
You're fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can file that with Terry. Okay, Community Services, Mr. Lovett.
Thank you. My report is on file with Ms. Buhite. Nothing else. Thank you.
Perfect. Budget, Finance, Project Oversight, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. No report for project oversight. Our next Sharonville Budget and Finance Committee meeting will be at 6 p.m. in the Administrative Conference Room on June 20th. We did meet here to discuss the upcoming funding for the Convention Center. Mr. Doughton did give us an overview on the construction status, and that's my report. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Honored Citizens, Mrs. Knight.
Yes, tonight I am honoring all mothers, grandmothers, stepmothers, and aunts. I hope you all have a very special and blessed day off on Sunday. Happy Mother's Day.
Law and Safety, Mr. Schmidt. God bless you.
Yes, the interesting thing is next Law and Public Safety Committee meeting we talked about is next Tuesday, the 16th, 4 o'clock Administrative Conference Room. One thing that, very important, I prefer to think of Law Committee as run like a research meeting, like what I used to do in my graduate school days when you had to present your work. And you always presented your work and said, is there something we missed? Is there something we could do better? But you have to look at both sides of the coin. I mean, this is what's good for, how is a neighbor prepares this, you know, when you see a lot of people coming in and out. A lot of these things you have to understand. So the Law Committee, and Casey and Jim really actually, that's a good group, is always, have we missed something? This is what we believe is the best possible approach. Did we miss something? Is there something better? And we always have to be open to that, because sometimes we miss something, but you have to weigh everything, both the good and the bad, plus and the minuses, and the total candor. So it should be an interesting meeting. I'm counting on you, Mr. Lippert, to lead that discussion.
Mr. Lovett, come with your questions, baby.
But for those of you who have attended law committee, generally speaking, it is always a seeking and a research type meeting, researching what we've done, could we do it better? So let's see how it turns out and see how this, we welcome it.
Thank you. Rule suspension motion, first and only reading with immediate effectivity for ordinances 2023-37, 2023-38E, 2023-39E, 2023-40E, and Resolution 2023-R06E. Is there a motion? So moved by Mr. Lovett, second by Mr. Cook. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, yes. Those opposed, no. And that carries. There is no unfinished business, so we'll move right into new business, please.
All right, sounds good. First and only reading of ordinance 2023-37, amending 2023 appropriations for various funds.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2023-37? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mr. Lovett. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-37 has been approved.
Perfect.
First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2023-38E, authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a contract to purchase a vehicle for use by the Arson Canine Unit and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2023-39E? So moved by Mr. Cook. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the, moved by Mr. Cook, second by Mr. Coulter. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2023-38E has been approved. Emergency ordinance 2023-39E is the first and only reading, authorizing the creation of a full-time emergency vehicle technician position to the fire department, amending the salary ordinance, and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2023-40E?
39.
So, huh?
We're on 39.
Oh, 39, I'm sorry. 39E. I moved to the wrong one. So moved by Mr. Coulter, second by Mr. Tankersley. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
All right, Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2023-39E has been approved. Emergency ordinance 2023-40E, first and only reading, amending Chapter 1321 of the Sharonville Codified Ordinances, commonly known as flood damage reduction, and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2023-40E? So moved by Mr. Wilson. Second by Mr. Coulter. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt? Emergency ordinance 2023-40E has been approved. Resolution 2023-R06E, first and only reading, resolution authorizing the Township of Westchester to install one flock camera on Sharonville property and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass resolution 2023-R06E? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mrs. Knight. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Resolution 2023-R06E has been approved.
One more opportunity for residents that wish to be heard this evening. Are there any other matters? Mr. Cook?
What is the exact date for Christmas on the Loop?
Tell you in just a moment, it is the second Saturday in December,
Okay.
and we're gonna move the time to 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. based on feedback.
Okay. 11 to 3, second Saturday in December. Thank you.
Yay. Any other matters? Is there a motion for adjournment? I see Mr. Tankersley can't wait. A second, please, Mr. Wilson. Is there any, all those in favor, yes? Yes. Those opposed, no, and we do stand adjourned. I'm not going to give you a chance to discuss it.